talk about something tonight that I'm sure many people can relate to. It's a pretty basic experience, and I think we all began this way, and at one point needed to endure a passage, a tight squeeze, so to say, to be liberated from the feeling of being cramped, feeling trapped, feeling like you couldn't move, you can't express yourself, you can't grow. And that's kind of how I'm feeling, in a very base way, I guess. I thought I would talk about the feeling of being trapped. And I'm just using that word because that's the first one that kind of came to me today when I was thinking about it. I don't want to bitch about it necessarily, but I don't think that really helps. Not for me. I think it can to some degree, but in the end, I'm the one who needs to figure out how to manage to extend my space so I don't feel trapped, or to exit my space. It's something that happens all the time in life, where we realize we're in a setting where the constriction is so great that it's cutting off something essential in us. And that's how I knew that I was feeling trapped, because I noticed that my energy just plummeted, and I was operating like a little animal that's gone into hibernation, to kind of deal with the feeling of being in a small place and needing to be able to survive there for a while. But that couldn't also present itself what it presented itself to me as was a feeling of being depressed. But that doesn't mean that I haven't been getting up and doing things I need to do and all that, but it's more of I can tell that I'm like a little animal in the corner of my life, or maybe I'm like a little fetus who's needing to, not a fetus at this point, an infant, a baby that's needing to be born from my experience. I don't know. I think that this is probably part of life all the time, that we're constantly being born out of one experience into another as we do grow and develop. And I think I've been thinking this for a while, that the tightness or the constriction actually is what enables the growth to occur. And then you need to move out of that because you've grown, right? So, and so in a way, it's a good sign that you're feeling constricted. Maybe it's a good sign that I'm feeling constricted, because it shows me that I'm reaching the limits of a given setting or a parameter or a way of being. The trick for me when I'm feeling this way is to try and learn from it. And I guess that's why I thought I would do this podcast and try and talk about it, because I thought maybe it would help me. I really hate feeling like I've gone into a shutdown mode, because I don't think that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I think I'm supposed to be being born. But sometimes you don't know what you're supposed to be born into, or what your next being is going to be. I'm sorry to sound so metaphysical, but the only way I can put it is I think this is just growing. And I'm afraid to grow, I think. So, because it goes against certain parts of who I am in a given phase. So, I'll give you an example, kind of what's been kind of bringing me to be more aware of a way in which I need to grow. And that has to do with, I noticed this with some clients. Lately I've been having I've had a lot of new clients because I've gotten on to some insurance panels. And what's so interesting is these clients are very different. I'd say for the most part, you would say they've been well bred or raised well. They've all gone to very good colleges and have, for the most part, very loving parents who've pretty much indulged them and supported them. And they're talented. They tend to have, they have jobs. They want to lead a more kind of expansive and limitless way of experience in the world. I've noticed most of them are not interested in setting limits or having parameters in their life. And that would be manifest in what I see as their essential way of relating to romantic partners. Because I think that how we relate to others who we expect to fulfill us, says a lot about your personality. And these people, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the city I live in, or I don't know what it is, but they all seem to be very much into a more, some of them would consider themselves polyamorous, open relationships, but they just present it in the session as if it's the normal way of being. And I can't really question it because, but they're very unhappy too. That's why they're coming to a therapist. They're not coming to see me because they're feeling great. They're not getting what they want. Let's put it that way. So they have this sort of limitless way of being, but they're not getting what they want in relationships. And actually they're experiencing like a high degree of abuse, I think, and maybe even participating in abuse. And so that's really hard for me to be around. And it's really made me think about the traditional moralities that most cultures have participated in, and wondered, if we've been quite foolish to throw them out as if they were, if they were simply a part of an oppressive system, I guess. So these clients have been coming in, and I've noticed they're very demanding with me, and they want a lot, and they don't seem to mind asking, and that it's a virtue to demand a lot. So it's this kind of came to a head about maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. One of my clients, who is, the very first session, she, showed me all sorts of, she was very revealing in her very first session. So she's very, proud of her expression, which some would say, you'd wait to get to know a person before you share, nude photos of yourself or something. So she was almost like she was proud of being this sort of resistant person. And I indulged this person by reading their book that they brought in, that they'd made up of themselves in their life. And I thought that was nice way to kind of get to know the client. But it did take me some time, and it was outside of the office. And I thought, well, I don't know why. I just didn't even think about it. I just thought, partly I was curious. So, but then after that, it became every session, it was more and more in between session emails, and read this, read that. I want you to read this. I think I have this. I think I have this. I think I have this. And it was just very demanding. And yet she did end up saying that she wanted a different therapist, even though I was trained to meet all of her demands. And she had come from another therapist who hadn't met her demands, and she was upset with that therapist for saying that she was depressed, because that wasn't good enough. It wasn't special enough to have a therapist call her depressed, I guess. Anyway, so that was an insult. So, and anyway, so there's this person who's very sad and unhappy and kind of in an emergency kind of situation. And so I'm trying to sort of jump through some hoops, but then at the same time, her not wanting to hear anything that could be helpful. So it was kind of a mess. So she was sort of messing with my head. And then along with the fact that a number of the other people who had come in, who are all kind of in that same 20-something cohort, all kind of in the same position. And I'm very interested in what's going on with millennials. And I have done quite a bit of reading and have been kind of studying that generation from a lot of different angles for over, I don't know, at least 10 years. So I didn't feel like I wasn't in the loop, because she wanted to know if I understood her generation. So anyway, but it wasn't good enough. What I had wasn't good enough. So I told her that I was happy to find somebody else for her. I'll tell you what happened. So anyway, so then after I saw her, and my head was kind of like spinning because she was so demanding, and then my next client came in who's not from that generation, but is also part of another group of really demanding kind of people who suddenly are coming to me, who are in their 40s, and they have, they're really demanding because they're unhappy and they want more from life, and they maybe feel trapped, like they can't get everything they want. So I think the difference between me and some of these people is that I actually really hate demanding people, and I wouldn't want to be a demanding person myself. And hate is a strong word, but I guess what I mean is I kind of have, if I'm really honest with myself, I don't enjoy demanding people. I will oftentimes capitulate to them before I even know what I'm doing. And that's something that I've been trying to understand about myself, to try and become conscious of why I avoid conflict with avoidant people by simply feeling like it's a joy to meet their needs. It's a really odd, submissive, but not necessarily right thing to do, because I don't think submission is a virtue in and of itself in any way, if you're submitting to somebody who's just a tyrant. So I know this is one of my issues, is I capitulate to demanding people who I just need to be a better fighter, I guess. Anyway, so, and that's that. So this woman came in after I saw the one girl who'd kind of messed up my head, and I'd seen people all day. And so she came in, and I've been seeing her for a while. And when she came in, I was listening to her. I wasn't not listening. She was doing pretty well. So she was, chattering about her life, which was great, because honestly, if you go to a therapist, try and have something to say. Don't just sit there and wait for the therapist to bring up everything for you. A lot of people do that. But so it's always nice when somebody has a lot to say. And I wasn't ignoring her in any way. I wasn't falling asleep. But at the end of the session, she did say, "You haven't been here today. Where have you been?" She's from the East Coast, and she takes pride in being a take charge person who tells it like it is. And, she's one of those people who thinks it's a virtue to demand what you want and to ask for what you want. And that's how she was raised. So the thing is, to have two really demanding people who were very overtly demanding. A lot of other people are just sort of implicitly demanding, and I can kind of handle that. But the ones who are overtly demanding, I found myself feeling like I went, poof, I was just like shutting down. So she said I wasn't there. And I was like, oh, well, my eyes are burning because there's been all this smoke in the air. And I felt I automatically just began to apologize. And like, oh, well, my God, it'll never happen again. Almost like, where were you? You weren't there, like you weren't here today. Where have you been? And I felt really afraid. And so, but I mean, I didn't show her that I was afraid. I just said I was very sorry. But then after she left and the other woman left, I found myself like sinking into this sinking feeling of despair. It was almost just like a pole of despair, just sort of pierced through me. And I was tired, and I was walking out to my car, and it had been a long day. I'd been in the office for about 9 hours, and I was just sort of numb and sad. And then when I got in the car, I started driving home and actually started to cry, which was a good thing, because for me, the crying, I don't usually cry right at the same time that a bad thing happens. I usually cry sometime later, and it may not be like directly, I may not be able to link why I'm crying with the thing that's really upsetting me. So that's probably not good. So then I actually was able to just sort of let some tears come out, because that's the level of frustration that I had, because I thought, well, what the hell am I going to do? I've got these demanding people, and I felt like I didn't have any recourse. What can I do? I have demanding people. And my brain was shutting down. Like, how can I deal with a demanding person? I don't fucking know. I wasn't trained to deal with demanding people. I was trained to serve. So it really goes against my persona to know how to deal with a demanding person without becoming like them. Like, I don't want to be like them. And this is something that I think about in our larger world too, all the time. And this is that's the larger picture, is constantly seeing these people on social media and in the broader society just acting like utter fucking assholes. And it makes me feel depressed, because I feel I don't want to be an utter fucking asshole. Well, what can I do? What can I do? And so you just feel trapped, because you don't want to be designed by becoming reactionary to assholes. And I don't want to be an accidental fucking reactionary. So this is good. So I start crying on the drive home, and I realize, wow, I am really upset, because I don't know what the hell to do. So, and my husband was gone, so I was by myself, and my daughter happened to be gone as well. She was in another, she was gone for this thing this summer, doing this art stuff. So, and my husband was over at his sister's house, helping, because her daughter is actually, in a really bad place. She is dying of cancer. And so that's been kind of something that we've all been trying to kind of work with for the last couple of years. And so he was able to go over and help out over there in a really practical way, which was really good. So I was by myself. So, but I was crying, and I felt like, well, I need an answer, What can I do? What am I doing wrong? So I just thought, something come to me. Part of me was like, I don't want to see either one of them. I want to have them both go away. I don't want these clients. That's what my first honest response was, is, do I have to keep trying? I don't want them. Because I don't want to deal with this conflict. The one, I know, I haven't seen her for very long, and she doesn't want me. So, I mean, if she, but that's good that she let me know that up front, because she's, likes to choose and pick and choose. And, I actually think that if I was really honest, the very first moment I laid eyes on her affect, her face was dead. And I thought, oh no, she's sort of dead. Like, her face didn't move when she spoke. She just kind of grunted her answers. Yes, no. Yet she was really sort of pretty, and like wore a sexy dress with her boobs hanging out. So it was a really odd sort of combination. And I thought, if I'm just like, I did not enjoy her presence. Not that I need to enjoy someone's presence, but I can't not enjoy their presence. And I don't know, maybe I need to kind of feel like there's a rapport. I don't know who would have a rapport with somebody who has a flat, dead affect, but I generally will push through things like that, and I will search for the thing about the person that's positive or good. I can't just let a person like that go. But I did that, and that's why, when she wanted me to read her book that she'd published, self-published, I took it because I thought, well, maybe that'll help me understand her a little bit better, because she's, you can't always quote unquote read a book by its cover, but sometimes I think you sort of can. So I pushed through, and I thought, well, I'm going to try. And I kind of put aside the fact that my initial reaction to her was a bit of an aversive reaction. I didn't feel at ease when she came into my room. I thought, this person is dead. And it made me think about that video, that Jonathan Paju or something video about Pentecost for the Zombie Apocalypse. If you haven't seen that, it's very good. I really like that guy. That he's an Orthodox guy, and I'm swear to God, I think I might become Orthodox, but I don't know. I'm really thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for about 5 years, because I think I might be Orthodox. I might be an accidental Orthodox person, even though I swear. So I didn't really like this woman that much, but it's also my quote unquote job. So it's like, it's so confusing to have this job where I'm trying to help people with their emotional life and trying to help them fix things. And so you kind of have to put aside whether whether or not you like a person, if you actually find them appealing, you have to kind of go, well, that's kind of part of the problem, is that they're not maybe that appealing. And it's up to me to try and find the part of them that is still capable of coming back into alignment and becoming attractive. So that's one of my very idealistic beliefs, but it's hard for me to let go of it. Anyway, after she left, the other woman came in and told me that I wasn't there. And like I said, then I went home and I cried. So, and when the woman who was dead, she sent me an email, and she was telling me, she had more troubles and concerns and things that she wanted me to read. And she's, doing all these searches about what she might have and this and that. Actually, it came to me, I'm just going to tell her that I don't read things outside of sessions. And if she wants me to read them, she can pay me my full fee, which her insurance will not pay. And then I said that. And then I said I could also find her another therapist if she feels like, she wants a different therapist, because it's really important to have a good fit with your therapist. And I actually really believe that. So I think there might be another therapist who doesn't mind working with people who are really demanding, because they maybe are a demanding person themselves. And so it maybe they don't have a natural revulsion to it. So that's possible too. So I sent her that, and she responded very positively. So I was really happy about setting that boundary. So that came to me, set a boundary with her. So that felt liberating. But with the other one who said I wasn't there, I had to ask God or pray or something. I'm using these words very lightly. Just like I had to think something has to come to me, because I'm feeling a desire to eject her from my practice. And this is new for me, to begin to think about ejecting people. and this is I'm only telling you this now because I've never ejected anybody. I'm always, like I said, I'm always trying to find a way to stay with people, because that's my thing, I guess, is like, I'm going to keep helping you, even though you're a tyrant, or even though you're not a nice person, or even though you demand too much. And so it's an interesting thing for me to have these thoughts. And like I said, they're just fleeting thoughts, but I think little fleeting thoughts that we have, they're like our shadow or unconscious things that we don't like about ourselves, or we should. It's not that we shouldn't like them, but we just don't really know how to deal with that. Like, how can I deal with the fact that I'm not 100%, I don't have as much inside to give as I think I do. Maybe I don't want to know that about myself. So, or maybe it's been too inconvenient for me, or too, maybe I couldn't accommodate that, so I just couldn't. So the fact that I was thinking, I just don't want them at all, or I don't want her, was sort of new for me to be thinking that way. And so, but I thought, is that the end? Am I going to come up with something else, And so then I went to bed, and the next day, like something so obvious came to me, was that I thought, well, next time I talk to her, the one who said I wasn't there, I scanned back through our entire session and everything that she talked about. And I thought, she was talking about when she has people over to her home for a gathering, she wants them to be their very best self. That's what she asks of all of her people, that they're fun. She wants everybody to be fun and have a really great time at her gatherings, and that if that's what she thinks that people should bring. And I thought, so she really wants people to bring a lot all the time. And so I thought, well, I didn't bring enough to her in the session, enough to where she actually pointed it out. And also, she's the kind of person who prides herself in pointing things out like that. So, which is probably a good and bad. So I thought, well, I'm going to talk to her about how it was a therapeutic failure on my part, and that therapeutic failures are a good chance to talk about, when a therapist fails, it means you're like a disappointing parent, meaning like children expect their parents to. It's hard for children when they face the imperfections of their parents, when their parent is going along, meeting all their needs and everything's fine and there isn't any friction, right? And then suddenly the child sees a gap and sees, oh my God, this person isn't perfect. And it's very traumatic for a child, but it's very important for those ruptures to occur over a little bit at a time. As a child gets older, they gradually begin to see more and more of the wholeness of the parent. But when they're younger, that would be so traumatizing and damaging to see that their parent was a real person, right? So the same thing happens in the therapeutic relationships. So when you're going along and you're trying to do everything you can to make it so that this person trusts you, because you're trying to form this attachment, the same way parents do with their children, right? And so they're opening up so much. And when you open up so much and are so vulnerable, it means that the therapist has to be all the more perfect in order for the person to be able to tolerate the fact that they're so vulnerable. So it's an artificial kind of thing that happens that is kind of designed that way. So you kind of have to play that game. It's a game that is set up in order for people to kind of have a deeper viewing or more emergence of themselves to come out in a therapeutic session. So when the person kind of gets into it, and then there's a moment where they see, oh, the therapist isn't paying enough attention to me, or they're not as interested in what I'm saying, or they look bored, or they look distracted. Suddenly, they're like the same way you are like when you were in love, when you first are in love and you think the person that you're with is perfect, and then over time, that person's real self starts to come out and you realize, oh, this guy
isn't as interested in everything I have to say as I thought. Like he's looking at his phone, or he's whatever. You know what I'm saying? So what happens is that in initial stages of relationship formation, there's this period of time, like the honeymoon period, where there's everybody's sort of, well, there's a feeling of everything's okay and perfect and safe. And we know this is not right and true, but it's like a strong fantasy that everybody has. It comes from your childhood, and it's something that maybe allows us to like do things that we wouldn't do otherwise. Sort of like if you were really super rational, how would you ever decide to commit and get together with somebody? You know what I mean? It's like this part of us takes over where we're just like, oh my God, this person's so great. And then you form this attachment. So that can sometimes happen, I think, in therapeutic relationships. And the reason why I also know that is that having been the client in a therapy relationship, it really does happen. You really think this person is somebody that they're not. So every time, as time progresses, when they do little things, you notice that they're not that person that you built them up in your mind to be, just so that you could be so vulnerable, and you could be so, you just imagine that there's so much more than they are. And that's okay, because in that imagining, we become bigger and we grow in that. It's really kind of a cool thing, but it can be very jarring. So what happened was I had a therapeutic failure for this woman. And the cool thing is that I was able to turn that back around, instead of me going into that place of, because she became very demanding, and I went into the place of, oh my God, I'll never let that happen again, or feeling like, well, that's why I got depressed, is because I thought, Jesus, I can't not have that happen again. And I think I knew that. I thought, now I'm really backed into a corner with this lady, because she's just told me the parameter for her relationship with me is, you have to always be there giving me your top, A self or whatever, bringing your A game. And if I don't bring the A game, then she's going to get demanding and angry. And it's very subjective. What the A game is for her is me being 100% there for her, and 100% interested in her, and 100% everything for her. So that made me realize I was very out of control, because I couldn't be assured that I would do that. So, because who knows what else might be going on in a person's mind, and another person interprets it like, you're not there for me. So I thought, well, I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to say I've had a therapeutic failure. And I did. And I said, it's really hard. And I kind of explained the therapy thing a little bit like I'm doing here with you. And I said, it starts off, somebody makes us feel like they're not there for us. And she wound up talking about some very serious stuff from her own life, and weeping about, those figures who weren't quote unquote there for her. And it turned around. But what was interesting for me was it got me out of the position of needing to capitulate on, yes, I'm going to capitulate to your demand that I always bring the A game. Instead, it was more about, when a person can't bring their A game, or when a person can't be perfect enough for you, suddenly it brings up your shadow, or that part of you that gets upset and mad and angry. And so it kind of turned it into where I could, instead of me capitulating to demands, I was able to show that another person's failure to meet one's demands can be the beginning of your own growth, in learning why it is you need other people to be just right for you, So I feel like that was quite a success in how I turned that around. But it was the beginning of me thinking more about how I have been, I haven't been honest, or I don't know if honest is even the right word. I haven't been able to understand, probably because of my own narcissism, that really just because someone's demanding that doesn't mean that I should do anything special or different. Does that make any sense? It's sort of like, just because it would create a conflict because I don't want to give in to their demand, right? Or I don't want to have a conflict because they're demanding. And so that means something bad's going to happen, because if somebody's demanding something, then that means that if you don't give them that thing that they're demanding, then they're going to be upset. But is that any way to live your life? To just, instead of like kind of having like something that's, you have a deeper value or a principle that you go by, it's like, oh, I'm going to give the squeaky fucking wheels the grease. That's basically what it is. It's like, oh, that's what I do. I just give the squeaky wheels the grease. No wonder I feel fucking trapped, So I'm swearing a lot tonight, but I have to do that because it's kind of like chipping away at the wall for me of, I have to have more courage to not do, to not give those squeaky wheels the grease, to go, who really does need the grease? It's just, I don't even know if the squeaky wheel thing even like works, but so many people pride themselves in that like, oh, I'm going to complain. Oh, did you go complain? Oh, you go, girl, you go complain. It's just, our whole culture's, I guess the victim mentality is kind of like the squeaky wheel mentality, right? And so we got this culture where all these squeaky victims are getting all this grease, and it makes me really angry. And it makes me feel like if I'm angry, other people are probably angry too, because I always come back to that. Because I think the reason why when I get angry about this, it means I have to do something. But if I just pretend it's not a problem and think, oh, I'm a nice person because I'm helping a person who's upset about something. If I thought about it that way, then I wouldn't have to do anything, right? But the thing is, because I feel a little angry about it, I think I have to ask myself, am I angry just because I'm a bitch? Or am I angry because I'm doing something that I don't believe is right? And I don't know how to stop behaving in a way that I think is craven, meaning I'm a capitulator. I'm indulging people simply because I want them to go away. I want them to calm down. Maybe part of me could say, well, I'm indulging them because I'm trying to calm them down so that I can help them come to their senses. Ultimately, maybe I'll tell myself that. Or I think, oh, that person, once you learn people's stories too, then this is another problem. When you learn people's stories or narratives and you understand things psychologically, you understand that people are oftentimes full of grief and sorrow, and they're all kind of like bound up with like anger, and they're frustrated and things haven't gone right, and they're all contorted inside. And so because you kind of like know that, when they act kind of gnarly because they're kind of contorted inside, you have a tendency, or can have a tendency, to go, oh, well, they're acting that way because they're gnarly inside. I'm just using, instead of going, wow, they need to stop doing that. The thing is that it's true. It's very true that, and you might think it's not fair to expect them to not behave gnarly, considering that they're gnarly inside, right? So how can I hold them to the same standards as someone who is, who has symmetry and who's got some order inside? And is like beautiful inside, and isn't all like demented and strange, So you think, well, is it just for me to expect this gnarly person to act or to produce an effect on the world that their internal world won't allow or won't permit? It feels, and then you think, well, how did they get that way? Oh, well, they had a hard time, or, you know how it goes. This is the whole victim narrative. But the thing is that I think it's true. I actually think it's very, very true. But there's a part that's left out. And I think when people capitulate, or when people give passes, I guess, to gnarly people and their gnarly behavior, because they think, oh, well, how can we expect anything more? What they're not really taking into account is that at a certain point, they're going to run out of indulgence and grace. And they'll, like, there's, I don't think that we have that in limited supply. And I don't think it's because we're bad. I think it's because it's not helping that person to do that, because it's making it so. And I talked about this once in another podcast, but I don't remember which one. But I'm just talking about it again because I think it just bears repeating. So it doesn't really matter. That's the thing that you have to understand, is that if you indulge the gnarly person's behavior because they're naturally gnarly, it doesn't really matter. You can't give extra to gnarly people and for very long without becoming resentful. And I think that resentment is really important to note, because it's at a certain point, when will it stop? Because we're trying to straighten things out, right? So the gnarly person has to face their gnarliness, and that's the only way for them to get better. Instead of the capitulation or the extra indulgences or the entitlements. I used to work with a lot of parents who had quote-unquote troubled teens. It was a program for troubled teens. And we would talk a lot about trauma and grief, because it seemed like all of these families had intergenerational trauma. Just bad things happened in every generation. It just kept passing down into that's how it works, because that's how gnarliness works. That's how it is. And so what would often happen, I noticed, and I've noticed this too, just like if you look around in your own life, you'll probably see this now, is that when people have something bad happen in a family, or they oftentimes begin overindulging. And I think the people who've had a bad thing happen. And I think it might be okay for a time, but it doesn't really, I think in a way it's kind of like a bargaining with the universe. Sort of like, well, this bad thing happened to this person, so we're going to do these other things to make up for it, so it's all fair and good, right? But that isn't really how it works with growth and with consciousness. I think that very often people would prefer to try and indulge people who have had a loss, as opposed to helping them to grow through the loss and to accept the loss. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about with the gnarly people. They usually have something that's, like I said, that makes them honestly gnarly. But my indulgence of them is another way of keeping them from facing what made them gnarly. So what people really need to be able to do is grieve the things, their losses and their catastrophes. Because once you grieve, what you've really done is you've accepted death. If you don't, bargaining people, it's almost like they don't believe in resurrection or redemption as a concept. Bargaining people are like, oh, that thing never happened, we're going to make up for that thing. But people who believe in grief and believe that you just have to face death and that thing happened, they, in a way, they're kind of living out resurrection and redemption, because once you accept something's gone, you say it's dead, and there's sorrow, but then what happens is something else is allowed to come up from that death, right? But if you deny that the death happened by saying, well, now that this thing happened to you, this better thing, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. And the thing is that the gnarly people really kind of hate that, because I think deep down every person wants to allow the truth to be there, which is that death has occurred, loss has occurred, and the only way to move on from the loss or the death is to acknowledge it, and then we naturally have a rebirth. We will come back to life. But it's a lack of faith that keeps people from believing in that. And they and faith in life, faith in kind of like, it is faith because you don't know how. You know, when you are grieving and you are like, oh my God, there's a loss. I can't have this thing is taken from me, or I'll never have it, or you feel it's very dark and it's very difficult. But you weep and then and nobody's saying it didn't happen. Nobody's saying, I'm going to make it up to you, because they can't, right? The only thing that can make anything up to you is when you just let the death happen and you acknowledge it, and then you come back to life. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I really believe that. And so I think that when I'm around people who are gnarly and I want to give them extra, you know, I think that I'm actually operating on bad faith, because I can't give anybody extra. I can't make up for somebody else's. I'm not, you know, I'm not God. I can just be there. And the person's own life, they have to be born again. Like I need to be born out of my feeling of entrapment. Maybe I'm grieving. You know, I actually think I am grieving. I had it really, besides just the fact that to me, these are very big lessons for me to learn as a therapist. But the thing is, they're big lessons mainly because I'm blind. I can't even see them until they're a lesson. Like until I'm in so much pain, I'm like doing this thing now where I ask, like I'm in the pain and I'm like, I need to figure this out. I know there's got to be some answer, something, and they start to come to me. But I think in the past, I think I've floundered a little bit more because I didn't know an answer would come to me. I didn't know the rebirth would happen as much as it does now. And so this is all good. But it has been a difficult time in my own situation. And, you know, my family is going through a lot with my niece's death, and my husband's also doesn't have a job right now, which I guess that's not as big of a deal as my niece dying, but it does put pressure on us. And then also last week, I did a podcast about this, but I didn't put it out there. But my daughter is fine. She's fine. But she did get in a horrific collision. And this guy took total responsibility, a young guy, and he rear-ended her on the freeway, and he sent her car like reeling through the lanes and off into a field. So that actually, when I saw the car, I really was struck by the fact that my daughter was very lucky, and we're very lucky, and I was very, very, very upset upon seeing that. You know, I've been tormented by it actually. A little bit less now, because it's been about 10 days, but I'm just hoping that, you know, just forgetfulness will help, because the image of it all was very upsetting to me. But that was sort of like the straw, a capper for me, the straw on the camel's back, because it made me realize that I don't know how I would survive if my daughter was killed. So, and it literally, I think that's probably what really shut my system down. Because, you know, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about how we sacrifice our children, offer them up to the world, and I'm getting chills now just thinking about it. And, I've been trying to do that. But that would be a really weird sacrifice, and it wouldn't be my sacrifice. It would be a senseless accident, it would seem. But, you want to protect your children. I was very angry thinking about that young man, and he, I was very angry that he didn't look up and he was driving, and I don't know, maybe he was texting, I don't know. It was very weird that he was going so fast, and he didn't see that the traffic was slowing down in that spot, and that, because it was very congested, and he didn't see her. But I imagine that he was feeling great relief when he ran through the field and he saw that she was alive. And I can't imagine what that would feel like to have been in that accident, and or to have caused that accident. And so that, I think, is probably the thing that really made me feel the most trapped by my maternal love for my daughter. Trapped by the fact that you can't do anything about, you can't really keep the people that you love safe necessarily. Well, you can't. It's out of your control, and I can't really accept that very easily. It's very, very hard for me. And so I'm working on trying to come to terms with my limitations as a parent, and the horrors, the terrors of loving people, and how hard it is when that your heart is like living inside another person's body, or it feels like my heart lives in a lot of different places, and it's strange to think of that. And so that's probably what really got me down. And I'm not really better, because I guess I'm living through the grief of just realizing I'm a woman, and it's, it's strange to be a woman. And, I'm sure men feel similar feelings, some men, but, I don't know, it feels, it makes me feel haunted sometimes to be a woman, but I don't think that I could do it any other way. I did it this way, and I guess, I understand why people don't want to be in relationships. I understand why they don't want to have families. They don't want to feel like they're going to be crucified by love. And they don't know if they can be reborn. They don't believe in redemption. They don't believe in resurrection of the spirit. And I mean, I'm not saying I always did. These are all kind of concepts that I understood as a child in mythic form, but I took to symbolism and seeing things symbolically many, many years ago. And I chose to, I don't know why, it just came to me. And I think that's why I found myself being drawn to orthodoxy, because orthodoxy does look at symbolism. And and then I think that's also why I'm so blown away that Jordan Peterson has come onto the scene, because he's really the first person I've ever heard speak this private language that I've been kind of decoding inside myself, because I did it, because I had to try and figure things out. I was always trying to figure out, like I've told you this before, I guess I don't need to say anything more, but yeah, so maybe I'm not trapped. Maybe I could just look at it as I'm grieving, and I'm grieving the loss of feeling safe in my culture, feeling that people love and share ideals around beauty and all these things that I took for granted my whole life. It really makes me sad to see them, to see Christians being put down, but not just Christians, anybody who likes Christian ideals or spiritual ideals that isn't just new agey, who really knows, like, it's not like this stuff is necessarily pretty, but it's really true. It's sort of like, it's just like what I said about grief and indulgence. It's like, of course we want to make somebody's sorrow or grief and suffering go away. Of course we would love to redo the math of the universe and go, you know what, you had a bad thing happen, well, I'm going to redo it for you. But we would like to do that. But the thing is, we really can't. And I think that's just the hardest thing to tolerate. That's the hardest truth to tolerate. So you can't really undo life and the equations that are built into life. You can just sort of learn how to manage them and live with dignity and beauty and persist inside of them, So I'm not really trapped. I'm inside of something that is holding me, and I'm going to stay here as long as I need to, I guess, but I don't want to romanticize it in any way. It's not romantic. I really hate grief. And I've done everything I can to keep others from feeling it. But I do think that ultimately it's the only way through. And the veil of tears, I guess. It's not that bad. Anyway, hope you guys are doing okay, and keep the faith.